You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Nope. But for right now, yes.
Hey, Jeeples. Welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the technical guy. I read the instructions, I follow them, I try to use the right tools and torque wrenches.
And I am Scott. And thank you for listening. This is the, don't forget to lock hubs, put the Jeep in 4 low, and hit the trail. I'm sorry, but I had to get that handled. And for those of you in Patreon land, so watch me hold up a TJ handle. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy that is constantly trying to derail this man's poor train of thought like I just did. And thank you very much for listening. So while we will share what worked for us and what didn't, like that joke, remember, it's up to you to do your research, read the instructions.
And please, 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 as Scott would say, like the red man... Like the man in the red suit following the 8 reindeers and the little red light bulb way out front. Follow them.
Follow that sleigh. I always wanted to say that. So.
Well, you got to here. You got to here.
Wonder what the Uber when that would be.
I don't know. It's still calculating.
Yeah, 5202 Candy Cane Lane, Northport. And for my next trick, I'll speak in English. Hi, Kevin. How are you doing today?
You say that almost every show now. You know that, don't you?
Well, all I want for Christmas is to speak in words. Speak in words. Welcome to show 83, guys.
83, yeah. Wow, 83.
We're getting close to that magical 3-digit number.
Can you count that high?
1, 2, Earnhardt, 4, Wallace. I have no idea. I was raised in the South. I can probably count up to Richard Petty.
I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to date myself, but I remember when Richard Petty was a rookie. It's amazing to see his rise from rookie to king.
You were there with Caesar's first chariot ride.
No, not quite that far back. Not quite that far back.
I'm kidding. So...
Anywho,
yes, before this derails any further,
we want to wish everybody in podcast land a very, very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Feliz Navidad. Any other particular Kwanzaa?
Yeah.
Any of the celebratory of life in this season. Yeah. I wish we could celebrate life all year long. But if we got to squeeze it down, now's probably as good a time as any.
Absolutely.
So I hope you all are enjoying things and spending time with family and friends and talking about future Jeep builds, trails to drive, places you want to go, how you're going to put your Jeep back on its wheels after you roll it over, kind of that stuff.
Yeah, or flop it.
Flop it, yeah. We actually do have a friend who that was one of those first date proposals. Hey, you want to go out and see if we can put my Jeep on the roof? And they did.
Yeah, they did.
So, anyhow.
So, hopefully, by the time you're hearing this show, Kevin and I will actually be in a field teaching new Jeepers how to properly do recovery gear.
Yeah, we've been asked to teach the winching class again, as it's commonly and colloquially known. But it's really about how not to mung up your Jeep when trying to pull somebody out or pull yourself out.
Yeah. So, big thanks to Mark Larson at the Jeep Lab, the Tampa Jeep Lab on Instagram for setting that up for us. But other than that, man, how you been?
Surviving.
Yes.
In an odd sense of deja vu, as Scott mentioned last show, he has moved residences or is still in the process. He's gotten out of one and is working his way into the other. My side of the financial department and I just went out in the country and bought some acreage where there will be a new workshop built with new and improved security features. But took Scott out there and let him walk around with it. And right now, it's just a great big flat chunk of ground.
Yeah.
But unlike many big flat chunks of ground in Florida, this one is dry and above the water table.
Yes, which is important.
And it was a former citrus field that unfortunately suffered from the greening blight.
Yeah.
And the owner of the property, being a senior person, decided that he was not willing to put the effort in to replant and kind of broke it up into nice size, rather irregular plots and has been selling it off. So,
Orange, you glad you got a good deal?
Boy, he's been really working on that one.
Oh, yeah. I even looked at the camera there for a second and gave the Patreons a wink going, here it comes. That's right.
Yeah, that's the problem. I'm recording facing you, so I can see all that.
Well, the interesting thing is we talked last show about how 2020 is going to be a very good year for all of us. Yeah, nothing like piling on more chores, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I had to go out, folks. So what I was referring to was when we bought it, it was not too overgrown, but the grass and scrub and things were about a foot high. And I had to go out there with my zero-turn mower.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have anything else. Exactly. 4 hours of cutting, and I could barely walk to get back in the truck and drive home, towing. And I have to laugh. I used my flatbed for my Jeep, which is 18 feet long, to put this little
zero turn
on
it.
A little 54-inch zero turn in the middle. And it's sitting there going, "Oh, I'm the king! I'm the king!"
Conversationally, you threw a bowling ball at a tank.
Pretty much, pretty much. But I managed to knock it down to where the neighbors are like, "Oh, you're already cutting the grass. Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." It won't happen again. No.
Well, we'll have some updates to come about that, and congratulations on that, by the way.
Well, thank you. This is one of those little life plan sessions of, opportunity knocked, and we are fortunate, very blessed that we were in a situation we could answer.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you answered the door in your bathrobe. That's probably why we're being sued by UPS, but
nah.
Or was it Amazon?
Neither. I know all my delivery guys. Come on, I buy Jeep parts, Scott. They're on a first name basis, and several of them have Jeeps and want to know how to fix stuff. So
I got that joke from someone else where they said, they want to spice things up, and he wanted to meet his wife at the door, so he had nothing but his bathrobe on. He opened the door, and it was the UPS, and now he's being sued by UPS. I plagiarized that joke from somebody.
Gotcha.
But other than that, speaking of UPS and getting Jeep parts, you cool to get into the meat of the subject?
Sure, let's run right into it.
All right. Well, as you all may know, I've been chasing the phantom wandering steering issue a little bit, and new gearbox, knew this, knew that, wish I knew that before I did that. Still having a little bit of the weirdness, and I'm now thinking, well, it's probably the controller arm bushing's warm, but the only other thing that I'm noticing, I'm getting scrub marks on the inside of the tire, and I took a picture of some other tires that were really bad on someone else's Jeep. And Kevin, you mentioned the first thing could be ball joints.
Ball joints.
Like, well, I just replaced the typical Jeeper. I just replaced those things back in 2014.
Yeah.
70,000 miles ago.
I helped you replace them.
And
it was a wonderful cuss fest, wasn't it?
And that's hence my apprehension asking you, because I'm the one that was kind of getting everyone back where you were throwing wrenches because someone got the wrong cassette. But we'll cover that in a little bit.
We'll talk about that in the garage. That'd be a good tool topic. But anyhow.
But in 2014, ball joints, JK, and the old Google machine, and came up with a handful of options. And at the time, I bought brand X.
Yep.
And just like any good Jeep owner, I religiously greased those things for the first 20,000 miles and then forgot about it, and then kind of greased every now and then made the magic, this $30 grease will help fix the repair of being negligent this whole time.
Yeah.
Here we are again.
Yep, here we are again. And so I gather you're looking at replacing the ball joints again.
Yeah, I'm looking. But the thing is, and it's a common thing everyone says, my Jeep's got death wobble. Okay, well, like mine, 30, 40,000 miles on it. Jeep JK ball joints have not lasted more than 20,000 miles on factory tires. You start putting 35s, 37s, they are not long for this world. And that includes if you start wheeling and flexing them out. They're non-greasable. And again, just like the government, they're made by the lowest bidder. So, again, it's now I type in the 226 options. I was like, what? I just need a ball joint. I don't need a home loan with a car wash. I just need a ball joint. Help.
Well, what's your question?
Well, you talk about doing. We try and do the whole do your own research. What is the end game for the Jeep right now?
Yeah, that would be my question. First off, are you talking about you want to replace the ball joints?
Yes, want to replace the ball joints for at the moment 35-inch tires.
Okay,
possibly upgrading. We're not sure yet, and medium to light wheeling.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with how you guys wheel, and I'm not worried about you. But Dory's
Leadfoot.
Yeah, that's putting it nicely. She is an aggressive off-roader, and feels guilt afterwards very nicely, but she's still an aggressive off-roader. And folks, I'm not saying she's a bad off-roader. She's absolutely not. She's actually very, very good.
She's more competent than me in a lot of things.
But she is a heavy footer, and with a 6,000-pound JKU, that's a lot of stress. And you've put almost 70K on them?
Since these ball joints, yeah.
You've done really good, actually. You're not doing bad. You're doing good.
Yeah, they probably could have been replaced a couple of years ago, but
Yeah,
I bought
true.
the $30 grease. That helps.
Yeah.
Mechanic in a can.
Yeah, good luck with that one. So, what is your question about replacing the ball joints?
I'm seeing everything from like rebuildable, non-rebuildable. Again, greasable, non-greasable. That's typical. Either you add grease or you don't.
There's more to it than that, but we'll go on. But go ahead.
You got nylon sleevings, all kinds of weird, funny. If I'm saying this wrong, guys, I get it. But just to get the gist of the information out. Again, it used to be, hey, what's the most expensive brand? Oh, that's a great one to buy, brand X, and then you went ahead and bought that one. And now
Not anymore.
Yeah, and then everyone with their brand loyalty, oh, this sucks because of this sucks because of that. You need to buy this.
Well, ball joints, quite frankly, are like any other part. You got to do some thought first.
No.
And you've done a little bit from what you're describing is, and this would apply to any of you out there. You kind of look at how am I going to use the Jeep? All right. Anything with a plastic bushing is not bad, but I wouldn't personally rock bounce on it because plastic does have a deformation characteristic.
You can extrude it.
You can extrude it. So you can actually not wear it out, but push it out of shape, and then you get a loose ball joint. Centered metals, which are the older style ball joints, and you may have a little bit of difficulty finding that somewhere, but there are some of them that it's a type of metal processing where they squish metal powder under heat and fuse it. That's called centered metal because it holds lubricants. And of course, being metallic, it has a higher pressure rating in most cases. Now, the other thing is, are you going to take care of it? Like you just said, that's a classic example, folks. Greasables are great because you can flush contaminants out, water, dust, dirt that gets
Kitty
pulled
litter.
in, whatever, you can get it out. But you got to get it out. So if you don't, here's the key. The seals in a greasable versus the seals in a non-greasable are slightly different. The seals in the non-greasable are stiffer and harder because they've got to kind of last the life of the ball joint.
Right.
Whereas the greasable ones have to be flexible at the lip to allow the grease that you're putting in to purge out and push the remnants out. So if you don't grease a greasable, it's going to die a quick death.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is this why sometimes, again, trying to play the part of any man here
Yeah.
or woman, is that when a hard off-roading, it looks like it kind of at the top of the grease ball. Am I pushing grease out?
You are.
Okay.
You are. This idea that ball joints don't move, they just turn is a fallacy. There's a big spring that is internal that is pushing the ball joint up against the upper seat or down against the lower seat, depending on whether it's an upper or lower. And if you put pressure counter to that, you'll compress the spring. Is that bad? No, that's what it's designed to do. But on the other hand, grease moves when you do that, and then, it returns. It either squishes out around the seal or it squishes out around the Zerk fitting if it overpressures that, which is one of the reasons they tell you after hard wheeling, grease the ball joints because you may have pushed out a lot of your available grease.
And now you're running it dry.
Yeah, it's not really dry technically yet, but it doesn't have that reservoir of grease to keep the water and dust out either.
Right.
Proper lubrication, it's funny, as we say in our intro, the manuals tell you what to do,
Yeah.
But still, the point is that your different bearing materials, there's solid metal bearings, there's centered metal bearings, there's nylons, there's high-density polyethylenes, there's all kinds of different bearing materials. And that's why it gets confusing is every manufacturer can claim they're the strongest.
Or have a different name for it.
Yeah, but strongest at what? A general plastic bearing, which is less expensive to manufacture, which is what Chrysler put in them from the factory, has a high self-lubricating content. You have basically self-lubricating plastics. So you polish the ball till it's mirror, and you put it in against this plastic and squirt it with a plastic-compatible grease. And under normal operating conditions,
Finger quotations.
yes, it'll last a long, long, long time because grit gets in and actually embeds itself in the plastic in such a way that it kind of disappears and it's not really damaging.
It's like a splinter gets under your skin and it's gone.
It's gone eventually, hopefully.
My thumb fell off.
That may be too. So the long and short of that is that you got to look at yourself as well as how you run your Jeep. Am I a good maintenance guy? Do I get out there and religiously maintain? Well, do I beat the materials hard? Do I literally have my front wheel leaving the ground and dropping back down? Am I hammering it? And that's just not rock bouncers, folks. I actually fall a little bit into that position because I wheel in places where I'll lift a wheel off the ground as part of 14. It, going dead slow. Okay, well, that causes the ball joint to actually cycle against its pressure springs. Now, not every one of them, some of the smaller ones don't have pressure springs, but regardless, the point is that when you cycle them hard, you move grease around or you may push it out. And if you're not going to be the guy who remembers to go home and said, you know what, I just wheeled this hard, let me pressure wash the belly and get under there with a grease gun. Yeah. All right.
Well, that's why oil changes used to be called loafs in the dark tickets, because it was a lube oil filter. They would here we go again. I think my brain needs lubricant. They would lube the ball joints, chassis points, and stuff like that with a grease gun and change oil.
Right. But manufacturers have gotten away from grease because people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem. People just aren't performing that level of preventative maintenance.
And that's how some manufacturers of certain ball joints will get a bad rap.
Yep. But again, if you're in that realm, and I'm not picking on it, but if your Jeep pretty much goes shopping and maybe climbs over a snowbank or two in the winter and is four-wheel drive to help you get from point A to point B in adverse weather, the liquid snow we have down here and the dry stuff up in the northern regions, sidebar on that. On the liquid snow, you really do have to grease because you're washing the bloody belly of the thing.
Well, not only that, you get the Florida Snowman kit. It's a bucket, water, corn, and 3 buttons.
But now, looking on further with that, all right, so if you choose greasable, non-greasable, now let's move on to rebuildable, non-rebuildable.
Right.
Deep breath here because
that's one that got me.
There's a lot of rebuildables. And a lot of people will swear, as you said, from one brand on, oh, no, you got to go to Yukon. Oh, no, you've got to go to whatever brand. Dynatrax. You got to go to
TerraFlex.
All of those. And they're all really good. My question, though, to most of these people is, again, this is a maintenance item, rebuildable. Rebuildable is often confused with indestructible.
I don't need to do maintenance. I'll just rebuild it when it breaks.
Right. Well, if you don't do maintenance, you're going to wear it in such a way. Well, the example I used with Scott when we were discussing this, because this was a real topic, was, okay, engines. I'm going to go out here and grab my engine. My straight 6, 4-liter engine, and I maintain it. And because I maintain it, it is rebuildable.
Right.
If you don't maintain it,
like my 88 Comanche, I had a number 6 cylinder detonation. It blew a piece of the chunk of the piston up, and it scored the wall.
And it scored it deeper than it could be machined.
Yep.
So your block was scrap.
Yep. Well, you can re-sleeve it and do all that, but at that point, it's just scrap.
Value-wise, it's scrap. Because I can go to the local pick and pull place and get a 4-liter block out of any number of vehicles that drove in there. Same thing with a rebuildable ball joint. If you don't maintain it, okay, you can damage the actual housing to the point that it is no longer rebuildable. The new bearing inserts will not fit. Or some of those manufacturers only sell the bearings and don't sell the ball knuckle. If you peen over or munge up the threads that bolt it to the knuckle,
you're done.
You're done. You're replacing it. Well, if you're replacing a rebuildable, why aren't you just
replacing it?
Buying regular ball joints. Yeah, a lot of people who put rebuildables in would probably be better off buying good quality, name brand, greasables or non-greasables, either one, and the correct tool to insert them and remove them. And we will cover that in detail, so don't think I'm ending it here. But there are those who run hard, play in water, with mud or silt, sand, grit,
you name
flex it hard, but they also maintain it. Okay? Yeah. Those people are wearing it out because of their use, but they're not abusing it. Rebuildable is an awesome choice for them. Yeah. It really is a great. It's what's your philosophy? Buy once, cry once.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you pay for the expensive ones, and then you can jack the truck up, the Jeep up, whatever, and pull the knuckle off. And you don't even have to pull the ball joints out. You can rebuild them right in the axle and put it back together virtually new. But again, that's maintenance. You've got to do it when it's a maintenance item and not a failure item, folks.
Yeah, well, we just talked about last show. You're down for the season. It's going to be a couple weeks. Go ahead and do that.
Do it. Hey, they're getting a little loose. They're working fine. I can drive it, but they're,
You get a little wander.
I get a little wander. That's the time to order the rebuild kit. I've seen way too many people buy, don't worry about it. It's rebuildable. I'm okay. And then they go back to rebuild it, and it's out of tolerance. No different than the block that's scored too deep to machine.
Yeah.
The difference between a fender that's dented and can be repaired with paintless repair or something like that, and the one that's crumpled into, what was that vehicle? Yeah.
Well, it's like you get a stone chip,
in your windshield.
Yeah, or in your paint. You hit it with the rust preventer and the touch-up paint. It will never rust through.
Yeah.
I'll get to it. Where did my fender go?
Yeah. Why can I put my finger through the fender?
Yeah.
So the key here is they're all good. Okay. And I'm going to stay away from, yes, there are really, really, really cheap offshore made knockoff ball joints that are going to give you 10,000 miles, and you're probably going to have to do them again. Yeah. Those I'd stay away from. But just to throw a couple names out there, the Moogs out there, and yes, they're Moog haters, but they make a decent ball joint.
They have their place. They really do.
They do. But, Synergy makes a very good Terraflex and a few of those. Both the rebuildables and the non-rebuildables. I mean, generally speaking, you can take a look at them. Some have warranties of some degree, some don't. If you get something that at least has a 1-year warranty versus the thing that's got a 60-day warranty, that kind of gives you a clue.
An idea of what's done. Well, real quickly, before our inbox gets flooded with, a friend of mine had Synergy ball joints, blah, 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 or I had some blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter which brand you pick. There's going to be people that hate it and people that
love it.
I like it. There's going to be some people that swear by it and some people that swear at it.
Yeah.
So again,
I'll tell you, in most cases, it's installed wrong or not maintained.
I think that's a good pausing point if you want to go ahead and jump in the garage segment.
Sounds like a plan.
Alrighty. Hey guys, don't forget the On the Trail podcast is part of the 4x4 Radio Network, and unfortunately, like most times, I just had the sudden forgetfulness to talk. But while we are here on the holiday show, looking back at all the fine stuff and all the fun stuff that Kevin and I did over the past year, we want to say thank you again to everyone, especially at the 4x4 Radio Network. So please check out all our sister shows, blah, blah, blah. And just like anything else, now back to the show. I had to do all that, and then I had to run over and hit the clicker button.
I can do it.
You took the battery out, didn't you, on purpose? The red light's not going off.
Details.
I'm going to go catch my breath. Kevin, why don't you take it over?
Hey, folks.
Found the battery.
Okay.
It was hidden.
It was unlocked. I just opened the door.
Uh-huh.
Okay. No problem there, folks. I can hardly wait for when we get the new garage built.
Oh, man. We can literally record from there and have videos from there, hopefully.
Oh, yeah. Yep. That means I have to put lights in, don't I? I can't just use the night vision goggles.
Well, not just that, but... Okay.
Can you imagine that, folks? Whoa. Working on a Jeep in the dark.
No. Patreons, you're going to love this because you're seeing this. Okay, so here's the deal. Before speaking of 2014, when we re-geared the Jeep, before Jasper, remember those rock lights I had underneath there that were installed the night before? Yeah, all 4 hours to do them. I had a flashlight in my mouth doing the whole thing, and when I got done, my mouth was going, wow, my mouth tastes funny and feels weird.
How would you know the difference?
Well, it's better than that it tastes funny and smells weird. I don't know. The schnozberries taste like schnozberries. Don't you hate the smell while you're tasting the plaid? Actually, speaking of which, I had orange juice one time, long time ago. It expired, and I looked at my wife, Dory, and I go, God, this tastes like the smell of cologne. And she looked at me. At that point, I think she wanted a drug test. I'm like, it just tastes terrible. And she's like, let me see
why didn't she get one?
What, the taste or
No,
the drug,
the drug test.
Because it will come back clear because this is El Natural.
Oh, boy. So he's naturally this strange. Well, I guess I knew that when I signed up for this podcast. So, anywho, back
That's why you
to...
signed with blood. Sorry. So, anyways,
don't get into an evil laugh
no,
competition.
because we're going to a subject that really honestly scared me and all other the 5 people that were with us that day.
Yes, well,
including the person we borrowed the tool from.
yes. All right, folks, what we're talking about is changing your own ball joint.
Yes.
And most people see that as, oh my, that's the most dreaded,
It is.
scary.
You go on any forum and people are going to say the same thing.
And actually, the weird thing is it's pretty easy in concept. Okay, you take off the wheel, you unhook the brake caliper, hang it safely. Don't let it dangle on its hose, folks. You've been warned that in every forum,
Yes.
every magazine, every podcast. It's real. Do not dangle on the hose. Repeat.
That's a no-no zone.
That's a no zone. Good. Pull the hub off. Pull the axle out just to get it out of your way. Since you're up there, just don't tear your seals.
And also check your joints while you're there for greasing and all that. Maintenance.
And then you take off 2 bolts. You take the knuckle off, and you don't, they're not even ball joints aren't even bolted in on the axles. They're just pressed in, and you just press them out. That's the theory. Reality?
Here comes the butt.
Yeah, the reality tends to be somewhat more,
Sinister.
well, let's just say energetic, vocal.
Energetic. Cling, 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 as a gear wrench goes spinning through the garage and the cuss words to follow.
Well, and the reason for that, it's very simple, and guilty of this myself at times, and then also coming in after people have started and then having problems. I find it to be prevalent constantly. And that is, we think, okay, let's just go pull it apart. Now, what do you think your steering knuckle assemblies live through? Let's see. They're outside the body. They're bolted up to the tire. Oh, they're bolted up to the brakes, too. So they get really hot, really
cool.
cold, chilled
Splashed.
with water, and splashed.
While hot.
Oh, they're real clean, too, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know.
Well, what is it you said earlier? Rust is the best Loctite.
Yes, exactly. So, and everybody just goes in there and grabs their wrenches. All right. And then they wonder why things seize up. I can't get these bleep, 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 bleeping bolts out. I can't get this. I can't get that.
Ball joints, having your friend do ball joints is just below having your friend move on a 2nd-story apartment.
I was going to put it very close to asking him to donate a kidney for you. But both of them work.
Waking up in a bathtub full of ice with a note taped to your chest, see a doctor.
Thank you. See a doctor if you're a nice friend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and the Starbucks gift card.
So anyhow, what I have found turns that particular chore into still an effort, but doable,
Yeah.
is a couple of steps. Number 1, when you get a ball joint tool, first off, don't use a hammer. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes metal swell. You ever see when you strike a piece of metal with a hammer, run your finger over a piece of metal, and you'll find a bump there? Well, that bump's still steel, so it's 36,000 pounds per square inch of pressure that bump now has to see before it moves. So that's tough stuff. So if you wail on it with a hammer, that rarely helps. Plus, in many cases, it will actually deform. And before you can get the ball joint out, you'll punch the ball knuckle assembly out the bottom stamped cap. And then you're really in trouble.
Yeah. Well, side note, if you're doing the C gussets, when we did mine, didn't we leave the old ball joints in to keep the whole round?
Yes, to keep
while
it
everything cooled.
to help keep things from warping.
Yes.
But in the removal process, what I have found is that before you start pounding, after you disassemble, even a little bit before, my favorite friends are a wire brush
Yep.
and some penetrating lube.
Spray it down, go have a sandwich.
Clean it first.
Yeah, clean it. Sorry.
That's critical.
Skip the critical stuff.
Because otherwise, here's the thing. When people don't clean and you spray penetrating lube on top of crud, penetrating lube's a thin liquid. What do you think it does with the crud?
Brings it with you.
It brings it with it.
all the dirt and grime go, oh, look, we got a passage. Let's bring friends. Yay!
Exactly. So I will go through there. I'll even sometimes just break out a Dremel with a wire wheel on it because it's small and maneuverable.
With safety glasses.
Oh, of course. I pick enough wire brush, wires out of blue jeans, arms, hands, gloves. Yes, it hurts.
No, I had a work story. I'll tell you later off air.
So you'll always see me wearing my glasses when I'm using a wire wheel. But anyhow, we cleaned up, and I clean around that area. Actually, I clean the whole area with the wire brush generally, spray it down, and then use a wire wheel right along that joint line where the ball joint's pressed in, where the nut is onto the knuckle assembly. Clean all those as much as you can. Spray them down, and then, like Scott says, go get lunch.
Yeah.
Give it time. Penetrating lube is not instantaneous.
Yeah.
You can see YouTube after YouTube after YouTube where people machined plexiglass blocks and then screwed bolts into them and then soak the whole thing in some salt water to make the assembly rust so you could see the rust bond. And then they will spray it with all these different things and show you how far down it penetrates. And you realize the commonality is time. It takes time for that thin lubricant, and you may have to reapply to keep it moving. But clean is the first step, is get it clean, get it lubricated. The second one, everybody goes out and they rent the ball joint tool from the local hardware store. Place. Even some go to
auto parts stores
or what tool stores I'm talking about, and buying even the relatively inexpensive kits.
Yeah, the one-time uses.
Yeah. One of the problems with those are standard ball joint presses.
For cars.
For cars. Cars, the ball joints enter the castings or the stampings, either one, straight. Okay? Right. In other words, 90 degrees perpendicular to the surface of the casting that you expect it to seat against. Mm-hmm. Ain't that way in a Dana axle, folks.
Nope.
It is 7 degrees of a wedge taper and a little more inside. And so when you put the clamp on there and you start trying to press that ball joint out, you're not pressing straight down out the hole. You're pushing sideways.
Yeah.
Not a lot, okay? Everybody says, it's just 7 degrees. That's not a big deal. I said, yeah, but in this kind of situation, that's a lot.
Yeah.
They make adapter kits, which are just simply wedge-shaped cups instead of the perfectly parallel pieces of pipe that you use as a cup to press into. One side's flat, that's for the press side. One side's taper, that's what sits against the castings of the knuckle. And they're at 7 degrees, which is the angle. And now all of a sudden, when you start tightening the jack screw on the ball joint press, it's pressing straight through the center line of the ball joint.
It's going the way it's supposed to go.
And every time I've had those cups, I've never had a problem pressing out the ball joint. Is it tight sometimes? Heck yeah. Mm-hmm. But they have always yielded with, I wouldn't even say cheater bar pressure, just a good breaker bar and or impact gun. Mm-hmm. And they've come right out. And the neat thing is when they come out neatly,
they go in neatly.
They go back in because you haven't distorted the hole.
Right.
So that is how I get them out. The Cuss Fest Scott was talking about was with somebody who'd already started. Mm-hmm. So they had sprayed crunch in there. They had been beating on them with a hammer already. They even put a torch on it to heat them up. And they did not have the cup kit for the 7 degree taper. Right. They were using a straight one. So everything was, you could go underneath and look at the head of the ball joint, which is usually tight up against the knuckle. And lo and behold, it was, I got a gap on this side. And that should be a warning flag.
Red flag, it's going in crooked.
It was coming out crooked too, which means that you're having to get it out crooked. You have to literally distort the housing of the ball joint. It is that is where most people have the Cuss Fest. Throw in the towel, pay for a flatbed, whatever call a friend, and so if you clean it, lube it, and use the right tool, it's really not that bad of a job. I've taken a lot of them out with just a 1/2-inch ratchet. Yeah. And it's surprising. The first couple of pulls get really hard, and then you hear that pop, and then, hey, it comes right out.
Speaking of that pop noise, I don't know if you're getting into it next to it, but there's that little trick you have when, instead of actually beating on the ball joint itself.
Oh, well, that wasn't a ball joint trick. Let's back up a little bit. What Scott's referring to is taking off tie rod ends. And
yes, that's what it was.
It's also the ball joint stud to knuckle joint. Okay. Not the ball joint itself coming out of the axle, but that nut. And I've seen a lot of people, you just loosen the nut till it's just at the top of the threads, or turn it over and screw it back on so you're hitting the bottom of the nut. And then trying to drive the ball joint off of the steering knuckle. In other words, break the taper. Folks, that doesn't work because you're not actually supporting the knuckle. The knuckle's just going along for the ride. When you hit down on the ball joint, it may or may not be bouncing against a retaining spring. You may be trying to drive the head of the ball joint stud through the back of the ball joint casing, and you really don't want to do that. So what you do in any of these situations where you're trying to break a taper, the best method that I have found to date, even better than pickle forks and things like that, is to take 2 1.5 pound hand sledges, hold one against the backside of the
taper point.
The knuckle itself, the casting, and hit 180 degrees across from it. Now you may have to play with where your hammers sit.
Right.
One is just a backup so that it kind of keeps the force, but the shock of that action going through the cast iron of the knuckle. I'm not talking about hammering on the ball joint or the axle, just on the knuckle, is usually enough to send a shock wave through the cast iron of the knuckle, and it actually will pop that taper.
It's the coolest thing when you watch and you see it.
And I do that one, and then I do the upper one. Now, if it gets a little stiff on the Dana axle, now this isn't on every housing, but if you actually look on a lot of the Dana knuckles, there's a little flat casting bump on the upper arm that goes from where the spindle comes through up to the upper ball joint. And that's actually a hammer notch.
Yeah.
That's there for you to hit and knock down. But if the taper's not broken, you can beat that till the notch is gone and it's not going anywhere. You got to break that taper free. And that compression technique of smacking it with a hammer, and if you Google, there's lots of people that show you that technique. It's nothing I invented. That's been around. I think my grandfather's the first one that showed me that one. That works equally well on the steering a tie rod in. And you're not hammering again on the tie rod. You're not hammering on the bolt or the rod. You're hammering on the socket part of where the tie rod plugs into. You take the bolt off. You don't have to take it all the way off. All you got to do is unscrew it 2 or 3 turns so you have a gap. And you can smack the end of that. I do highly recommend the backup hammer. And if you only have 2 and they're not equal, the heavier one is the backup, the lighter one is the strike.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to be hurting. And you'll be surprised. It doesn't even take that hard of a hit. You know, it's a tink, tink, whack, and it goes pop.
Well, we always see 2 or 3 times a year doing the steering stabilizers.
Yeah.
They had that front taper, and everyone's in there saying, oh, well, you get the 3-jaw puller and crank down on that bolt and get it to go. And you're always there going, no, just tap here, tap there, you know. And
it's like, here, move, give me the hammer.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, ting, ting, kunk, and it
pops off. So that's just a little trick. Now, let's talk about the opposite direction, the reassembly. This is really where the cuss fest can come in. And this is where I had to, on yours, wail off with a hammer to seat the ball joint because it went in crooked, and it created a ridge line on the housing of the ball joint on the outside. In other words, I'm trying to think how if you put your hand in a pipe that has a sharp edge, you're going to shave off skin, okay?
Yeah.
Well, you shave off, except it doesn't go off. You roll a little lip of metal on the outside of the ball joint housing as you drive it in crooked. It's critical that it go in straight. So here's a couple of tips. 1, get a pipe reamer. It's a little tool that it doesn't look like it should cost, it does anything. It's a little plastic handle, and out of the end of it is a Z-bent piece of steel. And when you look at the end of the steel, it spins. It's loose. It's kind of floppy. And you take it and hold it around the inside perimeter of a pipe that you've just cut and run it around in a circle. And the little thing tracks the inside. And those are hardened cutters. And they strip off any of the flash of the pipe cut. And they also put a micro bevel so that the pipe now slides over what it's supposed to. It's a tubing reamer. So if you kind of look those up, they're not really expensive. I use them on any kind of a thing where I've drilled a hole and I want to clean up the edge of the hole from the drill bit. The little reamer runs around there. They're $15, if that. Mine came with like 6 bits, so as it wears out. It's really sold more in the plumbing department. They were really big when you worked in copper pipe a lot on houses, and I know I'm really dating myself even worse than normal. Yeah. But once you cut that with the regular roller cutter, it definitely folded in an edge, and you had to get rid of that inward kind of almost like a paper punch kind of a shape.
Yeah.
And you use these little wormers, stick it in there, it goes, spin it around a couple times, and you'd see these little curls of copper coming off, and it left this nice smooth entrance. Well, if you do the knuckle, I'd actually do all 4 edges, the top and bottom of the bottom, top and bottom of the top, but just the entrance. And in the Jeep situation, they go down, okay?
Right.
They go up on the bottom.
No, they go down the bottom.
No, they go up. Well, whatever.
Yeah,
depends on the axles. I've got too many running around the brain.
Someone's been helping other people this past week.
Yeah, and I actually do a slight bit of lubrication. I like to use anti-seize, preferably just for me. I don't care whether you use silver or copper. I kind of like the copper myself. But then I go back in and wipe it all away. Okay, I try and wipe almost everything away, but the barest hint, it will, the ball joint's not anchored by seizing. It's anchored because the force of the Jeep wheel pushes in the right direction to hold everything together, if you follow what I'm saying. The ball joint has a fat head on one side. It won't go through the hole. The narrow side does. So then take a little bit of time. I usually start mine in by hand and using a very small ball peen hammer or even a rubber hammer just to get it as square and straight in the hole as I can. With that little bit of lubrication, you can usually get them up a little bit in there and then set up the screw jack, which looks like a big C-clamp. But make sure you use the tapers that are appropriate to that axle. And then lo and behold, you'll just start cranking along. You're like, hey, this isn't so hard. And you just kind of run it, and you'll see that ball joint go right up in there. And I've heard a lot of people go, oh, well, if you get it started, it'll self-correct as it goes in. No, it really doesn't. It starts to dig into the casting and dig in things. Don't be afraid if it does start to dig in to stop, take the frame off, and tap it. The idea is that the inside of the flanged head of the ball joint should be parallel to the surface it's going to land on the knuckle.
Right.
And if it's tapered, get under there with a hammer while it's still got a little room and tap it back till it's straight up and down, and then the cup goes on square. So, yes, it takes a touch to put them in, but it doesn't have to be a nightmare.
Right.
And the thing is if they came out clean, they didn't burr up the surface, they didn't... Now, obviously, it's like anything else. The last thing I'll close with, if you get the old ball joint out and you've really abused it, you live, Florida, where salt water is prevalent. Okay?
Or like in the Rust Belt. In
the Rust Belt, where salty roads are even more prevalent.
Yeah.
And you see the inside of that bore, once your ball joint is out, and that bore is, oh, God, that looks pretty bad. Clean it. Get in there with a wire wheel on a drill, on a Dremel.
What about the toothbrushing thingies?
They're not going to do as good a job. You want that rotary motion to clean that bore.
Okay.
Don't use a hard, heavy wire cup, that gouges, but just, one of those softer. Stainless steel's fine, brass is fine. Doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But the finer wire, you know what I'm talking about?
You're not cutting into it. You're cleaning it up.
I'm trying to remove rust, not steel, and get them good and clean, and then check for burrs. If for any reason you fought coming out, check that. Run your hand around. If there's a bump, take a round file. I prefer a half round because they're bigger radius than the little rat tails, and kind of work that flat. The time you spend making that bore clean. You don't want to take off metal so that you have a stripe from top to bottom. That makes a groove. I'm just talking about removing high spots. It shouldn't take major things. If you're going to use sandpaper because you've got too much, be careful again. You don't want your ball joints loose. We've got friends that have had them in and out enough times and they're loose and they have to tack weld the head to the axle. And you can do that, honestly, because the way the Jeep holds the ball joint in once it's on its wheels. But, loose is never a good thing.
Right.
But, you can use finer. Use 200 grit or better. Emery cloth with a little oil does wonders. But you're not looking to remove metal. If you start to see silver on your paper, stop.
Yeah. You've gone too far.
Orange is fine. Silver's not. So I kind of wandered off on that subject. But, it's one of those scary little topics that people go, oh, God, I can't do that. You probably can. In fact, the most people who have the least problem are the ones who don't know, because they don't know, I know how to do that, and will actually follow instructions and do it slowly and carefully. More isn't better, faster isn't better. Bigger impact gun usually just leads to busted pullers.
Yeah.
We've got one friend who has a puller that's no longer straight. It actually opens in a
cattywampus
CG kind of shape.
Yeah.
And it's not any good to do anything anymore because it's not pushing in that center line. These are what's called interference fit parts. They're deliberately made a thousandths, half a thousandths too big so that they do stretch the metal.
The force is what holds them in. And I'm not talking about may the fourth be with you, but may the fourth,
I was going to say, no, maybe it's the fifth that's been in
may
you.
the force be with you. Moving on.
So feel free to give it a shot. Maybe one of these days, Scott will convince me to bring a video camera out when we try to replace his ball joints.
Oh, we're going to definitely do that.
To finish up do you want to finish up your saga inside or right here?
We'll just finish. This weather's out
Right
nice
here.
right now.
Yeah, it is. Hey, guys, it's not 90.
It's like 60-ish.
Well, it's actually heading up. Today's going to be back up in the 80s. by
You're
this
right. It's
afternoon.
81 right now. Moving on.
So-
Cough.
But, but it's no humidity. That's the rare.
Yeah.
In your instance, I think given your history and the fact that you are in between residences and doing a lot of things, you don't have a shop, you don't have a place to do a lot of maintenance, I would humbly suggest you consider, shall we say that nice and loosely, a non-greasable but good quality ball joint for the time being.
Right.
That would probably give you a reasonably good long lifespan in the 40, 50,000 mile range. It's good for the kind of environment that particular Jeep's being used for, which is running to and from the hospital 99% of the time.
Yeah.
It is going to be forgiving of the fact that you don't want to go out and lay on the grass where you're living right now and annoy your neighbors and trying to, where's the grease gun? Where's the grease tubes?
Plus we're in that transitional period. We're not sure exactly what the future of this Jeep holds.
Right.
And, again, right now, safety's key.
Yeah.
You know?
And so that would be my recommendation. That's what I would do if it was my Jeep in this situation. But again, you do what works for you. Greasables are good. Just remember, you got to grease them.
Cough.
Cough. Well, let's be honest. And clean up the grease that oozes out.
Cough.
I've seen many a rig come in with the knuckles where you can't find the nut. Now, other people will joke, yeah, but then they're not rusty. There's some truth to that.
Yeah, but there's also no.
They catch fire with too much brake heat.
Well, not only that, there's too much lube on the outside than where it's supposed to be.
Inside.
Yeah. Oh, great! It's not rusty but dry.
But to those of you who are maintenance oriented and are hard users, large tires, wear ball joints, because ball joints are going to wear the bigger the tire you get.
Yeah.
Rebuildables would be probably a pretty good option for you guys. Just remember to rebuild them when they're still rebuildable.
Yeah.
Don't push them till they fail and then go, oh, I want to rebuild them. That's not the point. When they get, if you take care of them, if you lubricate them, the way the manufacturer tells you, and then you start to get that, hey, I don't have death wobble, but I got a little bit of shimmy when I'm cornering.
Tiny bit of shimmering, and my wheel tires are kind
Wearing
of
a little funny.
funky.
That's the time to order the rebuild kit.
Yeah.
And bring it all back in. Oh, one last thing. Get a front end alignment after you rebuild them.
Oh, yeah.
Because everything has worn and now you just put new components in. It doesn't mean that it goes back to its original alignment setting.
Well, also the pay ones, cry ones. If you're ordering them and you get a coupon online, $25 off your order or free shipping with your order, get the rebuild kit then.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That way you have it. There's no excuse, and you're done. Yes, you're going to pay a little more, but think of it, you're buying two ball joints in one.
Right, you're buying a second set for basically nothing, and just keep the box secure. I'd be tempted anything steel that I store. I made this joke: if you get prescriptions or anything like that comes in a case, or even over-the-counter Medicine that has the little packets, the
silica,
the little silica
the one
packets,
that say "Do not eat."
Do not eat. Exactly.
Crunchy.
Put your parts you're storing in a Ziploc bag and throw 2 or 3 of those in, rather than throw them away, and then Ziploc it, squeeze as much air out, and put it in your box. Don't just leave the part in the box.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes they're packed in the box in plastic. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they were, and they've worn through the hole. But I do know that if you put them in a Ziploc yourself and put the silica gel pack in there with it, or 2, and put it away, you can come back 3 or 4 years later and, hey, that part still looks new.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hopefully where you left it.
Yeah. So hopefully, although if you can get 3 or 4 years out of a Jeep part without needing to repair it, you're doing really, really, really good.
Well, hey, the weather's so nice. I think we would just end the show here, but I did want to take a quick moment for an off-the-trail subject.
Okay.
It's the holiday season. Everyone's patience is a little thin. We're dealing with family members, the whole 9 yards. You know, I mean, how many times have we all been in our job?
Uncle Joe won't get out of the bathroom.
Oh my goodness, Uncle Bert with his whiskey. But no, we've all been in a job one day, and we sit there and the customer unloads all their stuff, and it's not our fault, and we just sit back and go, "Oh my God, I didn't cause your problem. Please stop yelling at me." Remember that next time when you're in traffic or
and you're the
someone
one
else,
yelling,
and you're getting ready to yell. Remember that this person didn't cause your problems. Take a few minutes. Be good to each other. And I don't mean to get all hippie on you on the holiday season.
No, he's getting all hippie on me because I'm the one in the car that reference to is a sidebar to me in my truck or my Jeep when somebody does something stupid in traffic in front of me.
Hey, I've walked into work at Horse a couple times. Like, you're right, Scott. I'm like, nothing, an hour-long drive to work. Meanwhile, we can just take 5 minutes out again, just to be nice to people. Everyone's season is a little different for each person. Whether or not you don't know what they're dealing with behind the scenes emotionally, just be cool. You know what I mean? And that's all I was gonna say. Not gonna get too high on a horse right now. Just be patient with everyone. Kind of relax. Be cool, bro. Rules reply. And with that, again, we just want to say thank you to all you listeners.
And again, in 10 days, Merry Christmas.
Yes, and Merry. Oh my God, math. Miss Henderson was right. So and if we don't talk to you, because the show we're going to go ahead and record the January 1st show. We hope all of you will continue to download on January 1st. So please drive safe. Uber, Lyft, designate driver, stay home.
Even for any of the holidays, please do not drink and drive.
Yes,
we all know Jeeps are not the most stable vehicles, and no, you don't necessarily got it.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, guys, have a great time and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, and as we always say,
you're
said enough. Time to lock ups, put her in 4-low, and as usual, hit the trail with us on the trail with Kevin and Scott.
And plus, take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the trail. I got something right.
You did.
Go me. Go me. Happy Christmas there, Mr. Kevin.
Happy Christmas to you too.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey, Jeeples. Well,
I didn't make the face this time. And
that's the problem. I was ready for it, and he didn't. So,
all right. Yeah.
It's Christmas. It's the holiday season. I shall not cause harm.
4 mud grip tires and some parts from my rusted TJ.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precautions, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.